Good evening and welcome to Tower Talks. I'm Baylee Wang and joining me is Ryan Chandler. In honor of early voting beginning this week, welcome to our special Texas primary election episode. Later on the panel, Walton Gray Martin and Lily Bonin will be joining us, but first, with Super Tuesday coming right around the corner, let's focus on Texas politics once again. Last week we had the chance to interview Julie Oliver, a Texas congressional candidate for District 25 that stretches from Fort Worth to Austin. We now have the chance to sit down with another candidate running for the same seat, Heidi Sloan. Thank you so much for coming on today, Heidi.
Glad you're here. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yes, no problem. So let's just jump right into it. Why are you running for Congress?
Well, you know, I am a native Texan and grew up very working class, just a family that really worked hard to make ends meet. My mom continues to struggle with getting her own mental health care needs met, and that has really shaped my life. I've always worked in those spaces alongside children in a public school classroom who had lots of disabilities, lots of varieties of disabilities, and really loved that space, and then moved on to another career path where I currently am a farmer and I work alongside folks who have experienced chronic homelessness. And it's so similar in a lot of ways to my own experience of just falling through the cracks, of seeing the gaps in the system and how it does not work for everyone. And that led me to community organizing, which I've been doing for, I guess, about 4 years now in Texas, here in Austin and in other cities as well. And just really seeing the power of calling people into the politics that affect our everyday lives, asking people to stand up and to fight alongside their neighbors for their own needs. And so this run for Congress stems directly out of that power, out of that experience of how much people will pour into an issue that will affect them or their neighborhood. It's really inspirational for me, and this campaign has been just complete evidence of that from day one. Really just developing new leaders, standing alongside of them, and making sure we're centering the issues that feel evident in people's day-to-day.
That's great. You do have a long history of community organizing, local activism. How does that specifically prepare you for a job in Congress? What issues have you worked on there? What experiences have inspired you to take on this role? And how do you feel that will set you up for the job?
Thanks for that question. I think it's both the policy side of things, the commitment to the world that we want to see, and also the organizing tactics, right? So I've worked on campaigns for things like paid sick days for workers here in Austin, and then also supporting campaigns in Dallas and San Antonio as well, that all folks should have the right to stay home if they have the flu and not worry that they're going to miss their rent. I've worked on campaigns to support public school teachers, to support sex ed curriculum, to hold police departments accountable to a higher level of transparency in the community. I worked on an affordable housing bond, Austin's historic affordable housing bond in 2018, on the decriminalization of homelessness, and on Medicare for All, actually a campaign to convince Representative Lloyd Doggett, who I think really wanted to sign on, that he had the political support to do so. And that's really where the tactics come in. Knowing that business as usual sometimes feels like the insulated world of DC politics. But when we can break that open and bring more of the public into that sphere, then we can really influence our elected leaders in a powerful way. So organizing for me is an idea that it's not one person, it is a coalition. It's a coalition of nonprofits or grassroots organizations. It's a coalition of neighbors. It's a coalition of directly affected people, leveraging their needs with the voices and the platforms of their elected officials. That's my passion in community organizing, and it's the platform that I want to build automatically into this office as we make our road to DC.
So definitely trying to improve District 25, which we said earlier stretches from Fort Worth all the way down to Austin. So I'm actually, I think it says actually the area of Burleson, and I'm from Burleson. I just had the question that from an area that is more predominantly white and rural, how are you appealing to these voters and you're going up against incumbent Roger Williams. How do you want to take this on? What's your path to victory?
Definitely. I really love being in our rural spaces. As a farmer, as someone who grew up in a more suburban and previously rural area, they really resonate with me. And what I love about District 25 is that the gerrymandering technique, this tactic that has worked so well for so long for the GOP, is no longer effective here, because since 2016, we have the receipts that the trade policies promoted by both Trump and Roger Williams have not worked for the working class, that the agricultural policies only benefited a handful of giant agricultural corporations, that the roads are deteriorating, that public schools are not being invested in. So when we reach out to folks at these doors, we reach out acknowledging that they are experts in their own lives, and ask them first, what is it that you're feeling? What is keeping you up at night? And, the answers, they're never wrong. They're never out of the blue. They're always part of a bigger narrative of divestment from these towns, divestment from our public spaces and our communities, and being able to say to folks, that's a right issue. Why do you think it's like that? What do you think we need to do about it? I think that's where we get to call people in to these politics, and it's really inspiring to see how they step up.
That's great. Well, in part because of all of those issues, this is a hotly contested seat. Roger Williams has held it since 2013, and there are a few other Democrats vying for the nomination. Last week, we interviewed one of them, Julie Oliver. So what sets you apart from that field and makes you the unique candidate to hold this seat?
I think there's a couple of things here, and Julie and I spent a lot of time together on the trail. It's been really great, honestly. It's been a good experience for me. For me, the couple of things that set me apart personally are experiences as a farmer, as a grower, as someone who takes a bath at night. That is what this district looks like. It's regular folks who are working really hard just to get by, and being able to meet them there and to analyze their own experience alongside of them as that lens of a community organizer, and my policy background, that it is not a single issue policy, that actually I've worked on such a diverse realm of intersectional issues with the help of incredible grassroots leaders from across the country, that really there's no surprising me when it comes to the needs that people are bringing up. But I think most importantly, District 25 has been ignored. It was carved out for Roger Williams, and he does not come here. So our campaign from the get-go decided that the way we were going to change that was to reach out to folks right where they were. We decided in the primary to knock 100,000 doors, and we're going to do that. We have 2 weeks left, and it's just a clear plan to us at this point. And then in the general, we have a plan to knock 500,000 doors, and that is relying on those leaders that we're developing right now. It is definitely hitting all of our Democratic reliable voters, but it's also reaching out to new voters and swing voters and giving them a reason to show up. That's where that question of what matters to you becomes really important. It's really powerful in this primary. I can't wait to use it in the general, because I know so many folks just want that knock on the door, that opportunity to be part of.
Right.
That's great. But so staying on this topic of talking to swing voters and trying to get out there more, especially even canvassing in these areas that are predominantly Republican, possibly going to vote Republican, and also working with Julie Oliver at the same time, there comes this issue of political civility. Having that conversation with people who you disagree with, which our show stands for, and being able to find some common ground and be able to respect each other for your own opinions. So recently, last month, you reported assault when canvassing in East Austin by a group that you later learned was the Red Guard Austin, which is an extremely far left group. And I know you've been exposed to something that is not civil in the very least. How do you think that political civility is important in our day and age?
Right. I think that 2020 is this world that even I growing up couldn't have imagined, the level of political incivility. And on the one hand, I feel passionately that people should be able to express their views openly, that folks should be able to be loud and be present, to speak up and speak out, because those tools can be really important in times of crisis and times of oppression. On the other hand, there is a line between using our voices and using our hands and using oppressive techniques on other people. And so for me, it is really distinguishing between the two of those, that there is appropriate and inappropriate behavior. And in that context and in that assault context, it was the latter, putting hands on. I have a background in a sphere that is like social work adjacent, so I have seen a lot of what domestic abuse, what political oppression can look like, and it always looks like making us feel like we're alone. So for me, experiencing that was less about the trauma of myself or my own personal experience, but the fact that I knew other people were going through the same thing. And y'all, we're not alone. When we feel that way, when we feel isolated, we also feel powerless. It stops us from doing what we need to do to change things. But when we speak up and speak out and continue to use our voices, we build something bigger. And I think the answer to that political incivility, that overstepping of boundaries, is actually to band together and say there are so many of us who just want a better world and are willing to work through our differences to get there.
Well, one of our goals on Tower Talks is to stress that political civility and also to amplify the student voice, to provide information to the 50,000 Longhorns around here on campus. So for you, what do you believe your candidacy is uniquely important to students? What policies would you enact that you think would help that student community?
And specifically, I'd like to highlight too on higher education. I know sexual assault prevention is really big for you as well.
Yeah, I have had tremendous joy in organizing alongside student groups in this campaign, and on campus participated in the campaign to speak up and speak out against sexual assault, in the divestment campaign, which I think is really important to encourage universities like UT to divest from oil and gas and from weapons manufacturers across the globe. And then for the policy side of things, talking to so many students, hearing their stories, I know that we are at a breaking point of economic crisis, that student after student has told me that they don't even know if they are going to try and start a family, that they don't know that they can follow the career path that is their heart and that brings them joy because of the overwhelming burden of student debt. And things don't have to be this way. I think we have gotten to a breaking point, and it is time to push the reset button. There's actually a reset button built into our Department of Education, which makes that relatively easy compared to most policy works. But to wipe out student debt, to reset, and then to go forward saying that there should be public options, that public universities and public community colleges are goods for all of us, that there should not be a burden or a lack of access for anyone who wants to get that higher level of education. So making those tuition free and then investing heavily in historically Black colleges and universities, which I think will have tremendous outcomes, especially in the world of healthcare, where we see incredible racial disparities, especially in places like Texas right now. So it's really looking at not just a student issue, but how that experience as a student shapes a person's life going forward into the long term.
Right, I know all of those issues are at the top of student minds, so we're glad that you were talking about them. Heidi Sloan, thank you so much again for joining us on Tower Talks.
Thanks so much
Thank you for your
having me.
time.
All right, well, up next, we'll speak with Jose Garza, who's running for district attorney in Travis County. That and more after the break.